Hello, everybody. Welcome to my channel. I am Dr. P, also known as Dr. Perkins, a board-certified OBGYN. And today we are talking about what hormone causes uterine fibroids to grow. Now, if you're here, you're probably listening in because you have fibroids. You've heard that you have them and you want to know what you can do about it. So you want to listen in and go to the end of this video. If you do, I do have a free gift for you. But I'm going to make sure that in this video, we are talking fully about the hormones that are involved with fibroid growth, how these hormones work, and we'll finish up by talking about treatments and things that you can do to help to become more hormonally balanced in order to help impact how your fibroids are growing and maybe potentially even cause them to shrink. So let's start today by talking about fibroids and what they are. Fibroids are smooth muscle tissues that essentially come together as like a ball. They feed off of our hormones internally, and over time, while we're in our reproductive years, so that's any time between puberty, when you first had a period, all the way to menopause when you had your last period. If you have fibroids, they just grow and grow and grow and grow and grow from year to year. But as soon as you get to a state of menopause where your hormones decrease in your system, now your fibroids begin to shrink. And the reason is fibroids love hormones. When we think of nutrition for fibroids, hormones, that's what does it. As females, about 70% of us will have fibroids by the time we are 50 years old. And if you're a Black female like me, that likelihood of having fibroids by the age of 50 goes closer to 80 or even 85%. That means a majority of us females of all kind, wherever you are in the world, will have fibroids. Now, everyone with fibroids won't necessarily have a problem. And sometimes you won't even know that you have one until you have a scan, like an ultrasound or even like a CAT scan or MRI that tells you that you have them. But a small portion or a smaller portion of people with fibroids will have symptoms. And those symptoms can be pelvic pain. It could be menstrual irregularity, meaning that you have bleeding at random times, you have heavier bleeding when you do have your periods. Sometimes you can have bleeding that lasts longer than what a typical period would be. So instead of it being 3 to 5 days, you might bleed for 7 to 9 days or even more. So fibroids, depending on where they are, can be a problem. Now that we're talking about where those are, let's bring out a uterus to help us with our conversation today. So as you can see here, this is a uterus. These are your fallopian tubes. We have 2 of them. And this is our ovary on the right side, ovary on the left. Now, kind of ignore some of the extra stuff that is on here, like the angry eyes or some of these blood patches. This is actually our plush for endometriosis, different conversation. But this will help us understand a little bit about fibroid location. So in this center area here is our endometrial cavity. It is a part of the uterus that makes periods. It is where pregnancies develop and establish themselves. It is where the baby grows. And so this space in here is extremely important. Inside of this area, you can have fibroids. Those fibroids would be called submucosal fibroids. When we talk about having symptoms because you have fibroids, we're really talking about fibroids that are in this area here. And the reason is, if you have fibroids that are in this internal area where bleeding comes from, they can cause more bleeding. They can cause heavier bleeding. They can cause irregular bleeding. And so those are the most problematic fibroids. And that's regardless of how big they are. Sometimes you can have fibroids the size of a rice grain versus a blueberry versus a plum versus an orange versus a watermelon. Right? Fibroids can be pretty large. So regardless of the size, if you have fibroids in this area, you may have a lot of symptoms. This is a part of the reason why a majority of females won't know that they have fibroids, because their fibroids are not in this area. So where else can they be? Well, they can be in the muscle, which is right deeper to the internal area of the uterus. Those are called intramural. It could also be towards the outside, like almost like the skin, like the outer layer of the uterus. And those are called subserosal fibroids. And there's a fourth type of fibroid. These fibroids can actually hang off. It's almost as if how your fallopian tube looks here, like it's hanging off but connected to the uterus. Fibroids can do that as well. And they can be located anywhere, front, back, on top, below your uterus. And they can cause problems as well. All of these fibroids are growing from year to year. They can grow 1 to 2 centimeters per year. So if you were 15 years old and you have a fibroid, by the time you are 20 or 25 years old, you may have one that is as large as a melon. And people have surgically operated on who have had fibroids as large as a basketball. These things are real, and they grow each year. Now, does size impact your overall picture? To some degree. Again, if these fibroids are within the internal area or cavity of your uterus, they cause the most problems regardless of size. Outside of the internal area, those other fibroids may cause you to feel or have your tummy look like you're pregnant and you're not actually pregnant. It can cause you to have pain with sexual intercourse. It can cause you to have a lot of bloating and heaviness in your lower abdominal section. It can cause a lot of things. And so, if you have fibroids, it is extremely important that you follow up with your provider on a regular basis, annually at least, to kind of keep an eye on them and how they're growing. Now, a majority of fibroids are benign. 98% of them are benign, meaning that they're not cancerous. About 1 to 2% of them can be cancerous. And this is the reason why you want to follow up with your provider and not just sleep on your fibroids. Now, when we think about our hormones and how our hormones impact our fibroids, the conversation of today's video, estrogens, which are our dominant female sex hormone, estrogens cause fibroids to grow. It causes your fibroids to grow at more rapid rates. And overall, if we're in a state of estrogen dominance, that means our estrogens are way higher than they're supposed to be all the time, the likelihood of those fibroids growing faster and faster and becoming more and more irregular increases over time. Our second most common female sex hormone is progesterone. And progesterone actually does the opposite. Progesterone typically causes fibroids to shrink or not grow. As we go through our menstrual cycle every single month, the first half of our cycle is dominated by estrogens. After you ovulate, the second half of your cycle is dominated by progesterones. In a normal, perfect world, these estrogens and progesterones are constantly going back and forth like a yo-yo effect every single month, which is normal and stable and well. If at any point you become hormonally imbalanced, your estrogens are likely to be the one to be way higher and your progesterones are lowered. And that causes us to have an imbalanced state that leads to fibroids growing. This is also a part of the reason why fibroids tend to grow in our reproductive years, the years between puberty and menopause, because during those years, we have the constant flux of progesterone and estrogens going back and forth. Once you hit menopause, estrogens go down, yay. Progesterones go down as well, but your estrogens drop the most. And because of that, fibroids seldomly will continue to grow unless they're abnormal. They'll shrink and shrink and shrink over time. There are other things that can impact the hormones and the hormonal regulation of fibroids. Things like obesity. Obesity usually means that we have more fat cells than we should, or they're larger than they ought to be. If our fat cells are super active or we have a lot of them, they produce estrogens as well. as we talked about estrogen being that hormone that typically causes fibroids to grow, if you're making more from fat cells, the likelihood of those fibroids growing increases, and the likelihood of you being hormonally imbalanced increases as well. Your diet can impact your hormonal state. If you're not eating enough fiber, for instance, you are not giving your body what it needs to help to release excess hormones from your system, because fiber doesn't get absorbed by your body. When you eat it, when you think of the skin of an apple or a green vegetable like broccoli, a lot of that fruit or vegetable actually is not being digested by your system. It is staying inside of your digestive tract, and it's doing a great thing. It is trapping all the excess hormones your body is actually trying to get rid of, and it wraps it all up and allows it to be excreted through your stool, and it is no longer available for your system to use or reuptake. And this is super important, especially if you're already in an imbalanced hormonal state. Eating enough fiber will help to release that. Xenoestrogens, have you heard of that? This is estrogens and hormones that are actually around us in our environment. This is a topic that I've talked about a lot and is really very dear to me, because sometimes we don't realize as females that we're surrounding ourselves. Sometimes you can't help yourself, but you're surrounded by hormone disruptors. We eat them, we put them on our skin when we moisturize our skin, we wash our hair with them, we are using them with the plastics that we're storing in our refrigerator or heating our food up in plastics. I mean, there's so many different ways that we have hormone disruptors around us that are internally getting in our system and allowing our bodies to become more and more imbalanced. The more imbalanced we are, the more our fibroids will grow. And so we want to be mindful and learn of these things. And again, if you listen and follow towards the end of this video, I will give you more information that will help to jumpstart your understanding and elimination of these things in your environment. And I must mention here that stress is another factor that helps us to become more hormonally imbalanced and may lead to our fibroids growing. Now, I'm going to tell you a quick little story about something that I experienced myself. I've been on a hormonal journey for, since my teenage years. And by the end of college, when I learned and studied kinesiology and exercise and sports science and all of these things and preparing for medical school, I learned a lot about hormones. And this is where my hormonal regulation journey started. During that time frame, I created habits that helped me to lose weight. I was much heavier. It allowed me to be able to improve my overall feeling, and my hormonal picture just improved tremendously. All the way until when I was studying for my board exams, I completely shut down my life studying for probably what I would call the hardest test of my life. And I wasn't exercising anymore. I was just eating to survive. I was working full time while doing this. I was essentially working at least 10 to 12 hours during the day and studying for about another 8 to 10. So I was like sleeping very little. I was super stressed out. And let me tell you how my fibroids grew and grew and grew. And I literally only did this for 6 months of my life. However, it was probably the worst 6 months of my life, because I gained about 40 pounds during those 6 months. And this was only about 4 or 5 years ago. And I was surprised at how my body felt, how my skin looked, my mood and unhappiness. I became so imbalanced that I was shocked. But when I saw and my tummy grew and got bigger and bigger and bigger, and I got an ultrasound, and when they told me how my fibroids grew in a short period of time, I was shocked. And that's when I truly made a stand to not do that again. That I don't care where life takes me, I am going to be committed to making sure that I'm doing these things that I need to do to help treat my body well and to make it the temple that I believe that it is. Because how you feel and look is so important to who you are. Fast forward, got it together and still working at it as we go through all the other changes of life. But the important thing here is that I was able to get my fibroids to shrink. My fibroids shrunk within 4 years of just getting it back together, getting life together. And it is a testament in that if you have them and they've grown, you can reverse the process. You can impact how they function. Instead of them growing 1 to 2 centimeters per year, you can actually cause the reverse to happen, or at least cause them to be stabilized. All having to do with your lifestyle, your changes, and these are all things that I teach in our programs and with my members, because if I've done it, I know that you can do it too. Now, there are other options for treatment with fibroids. You can always remove them with a myomectomy. You can always have a hysterectomy if that's your best option. You can embolize them by blocking blood flow to them. These are things that us as experts and specialists can do, but know that lifestyle is a very important part of that. Now, because you've listened to the end, and I promised you that I have something for you for listening, because you've been here and you've been so true to me in this channel, I'd like to give you a free copy of my hormone book, my ebook, Hormones Don't Lie. In this, I am giving you lots of gems and things to jumpstart your journey to become more balanced, to decrease your hormonal imbalances, to help your estrogens not be so much of a dominant factor in your life anymore. If you're ready to control or take control of your life, you want to get a copy of this ebook. The way to do that is to click the link below this video, and I will happily send it right over to you. Thank you so much for listening today. If you have any further questions, I'd love to know them. Drop them in the comments section below. And of course, if you want to learn more, join us on our channel here, because you'll find much more about this topic, your hormones, and so much more, because we're here to learn and become stronger every day. Thank you so much for listening in. I'm Dr. P, and I'll see you next time.